Hello everyone. Thanks for joining us at the Champaign County History Museum's History Talk tonight. I'm Perry Morris. I'm the Vice President of the museum, and I've also done quite a bit of research on the Sale family. So I'm going to be doing the presentation tonight. Let me begin with acknowledging our late Executive Director, Paul Eidelman. He was working with Jenny Wren Moore, Virginia's daughter. Paul was instrumental in obtaining the collection of between 375 and 400 pieces of ephemera, at least half being photos. I've tried to include as many of those photos as I could in the talk. This presentation is in two parts. First, we're going to have an overview of the family, then a closer look at Charlie, or Chick as he was professionally known. There will be another presentation that takes a closer look at Virginia Sale coming up in the future. This is Lillie Belle Partlow and her parents. Rachel Davison Partlow, Jessie Partlow, and Lillie Belle Partlow. This is Lillie Belle. One at age 16, the other one is undated. And here's Frank's side of the family. His mother, Maria Kramer Sale, Reverend Frederick Bonner Sale, and Frank. This is the house where Frank was born, 201 East Water Street in Urbana. Okay. Frank's family moved when he was 4 months old to a farm in Condit Township where he grew up. He attended the Wesley Chapel School and the Champaign High School, and then attended Illinois State Normal University at Normal. For 3 winters, he taught school, 2 of the years being at the Lester School north of Mahomet. During the vacation period, he studied dentistry in the office of Dr. O.F. Britton in Champaign, and in 1880, he purchased the business of Dr. J.R. Brigham in Rantoul and engaged in business for himself. He also spent 2 days each week in a branch office at Potomac. Here's a couple of photos in Dr. Sale in his dental office. Quite early on the left, and the later one is in when he had his office upstairs in the Knowlton Bennett building. Frank and Lillie were married 8 September 1881. They moved to Huron, Dakota Territory in March 1882, where Frank established a dental practice. South Dakota became the 40th state on 2 November 1889. They returned to Illinois in 1894, settling in Urbana with their first 3 children. Edna Maria Sale. Now, the photo on the left was labeled as Edna, but I think she looks more like Virginia, but they're sisters, so who knows. All of the Sale children were talented, but Edna did not gain national fame. Her talents as an elocutionist were recognized in Urbana, giving various readings and recitals. As her brothers and sister, she was also a talented impersonator. Edna graduated from the School of Expression at Northwestern in 1906. She married Joseph McCoy and moved to Minneapolis in 1907. She teaches many private pupils. She also had a talent as a painter in oils, and she's with her mother in this picture. Charlie, as the family called him, was born in Huron, Dakota Territory, 25 August 1885. I've got a little story here that also includes brother Dwight. When the family was living in Huron and Charlie was very young and rather scrawny looking, Dr. Sale told Charlie and his brother Dwight they'd be pumping out the cistern Saturday morning as the water had gotten brackish and needed to be changed. Charlie got up earlier than usual and snuck off. Dr. Sale couldn't find him anywhere and had to be getting to his dental office. Next Saturday, he was up even earlier and got the boys before they could escape. Somewhat like Tom Sawyer, the boys began to pump slowly, then with increased enthusiasm as a group of about a half dozen boys who had also escaped work at their own homes gathered around and began to jeer at them. I lost my place. Charlie issued a challenge. I bet you couldn't pump 10 times with one hand. The challenge from the diminutive Charlie was more than the jeering lads could stand. One of them took the pump and demonstrated that he could pump 20 times with one hand. Then another beat his record. After that, the competition grew so keen that all the sail boys had to do was sit in the shade and keep score. And of course, we've got a lot more about Charlie coming up. Dwight Orville Sale was born in Huron, Dakota Territory, 27 February 1887. The family returned to Illinois when he was 8 years old. He attended the Urbana Public Schools and was a student in the University of Illinois. He was a member of the Delta Tau Delta fraternity. He had spent some time working in Ordway, Colorado, and returned to Urbana early in August to work on the Chautauqua grounds. He accepted a good offer to go work in Bisbee, Arizona. Many people felt that Dwight was much better as an impersonator than his brother Charlie. In the days when William Jennings Bryan, Billy Sunday, and Booker T. Washington were headliner attractions at the Urbana Chautauqua, Dwight would draw large crowds from the main tent by his impromptu lectures on a stump nearby. The mine accident. Dwight was working the night shift, and Friday morning, December 13th, at 3 o'clock was returning to work after having had lunch. He and two co-workers were passing through a drift considered one of the safest in the mine. The man in advance passed in safety, but when Dwight came, a rock fell and pinned him to the ground. Before he could move, another rock came and struck him. The miner in the rear tried desperately to extricate Dwight, but found it impossible. Rocks and debris continued to fall. He fled to the shaft to give the alarm. In a few minutes, a large force of men attacked the cave-in. After an hour's work, Dwight's head was uncovered, and the gang worked with rebounded energy when they discovered he was still alive. Finally, they got him extricated and removed up to the boiler room, where a physician examined him. He saw no hope. Dwight lapsed into unconsciousness and died at 7 o'clock at the hospital. Letters from Bisbee expressed regret and sorrow and related how one co-worker, who could barely even speak English, rushed around with tears in his eyes crying, "Our funny little man is killed." Funeral services were held 17 December 1907 at the First Methodist Church in Urbana. The church was crowded, and the doors leading into the Sunday school room were open to accommodate everyone. The pastor, Reverend H.C. Gibbs, preached the funeral sermon while prayer was offered by Dr. C.B. Taylor, Reverend Meigs of the Baptist Church, and Reverend Findlay of the Presbyterian Church. Pallbearers were members of Dwight's fraternity. The procession made its way over the snow-covered road to Woodlawn, where brief graveside services were conducted by Dr. Taylor and Reverend Gibbs. The Delta Tau Delta ritual for the dead was given by the fraternity. Floral tributes were sent by the fraternity, the boys at Bisbee, Doc's Urbana friends, and a piece from the Machinists Union. This is the Sale family tent at the Chautauqua. It's undated. And the only person I'm fairly sure of is the little girl on the left. I'm pretty sure that's Virginia. Cora Virginia Sale, and she almost always went by her middle name. Not run across anything where people called her Cora. And we've got more in the third part coming up off in the future about Virginia. Here's a family group. In the front row we have Frank, Virginia, and Lillie. And in the back row we have Charlie, Edna, and Dwight. Two more family groupings. We've got the Sale men on the left and the Sale women on the right. Obviously taken at different points in time. They were not taken at the same weekend. And this, I've just got an assortment mostly here of different family pictures we got from the collection. It's Charlie and a young Virginia. Lillie Belle at the Washington, D.C. National Parade for Equal Suffrage. This was on 3 March 1913. This is outside the Sale family home at 606 West Main, Urbana. This is in Hollywood. Actually, Frank and Lillie visited out there quite a bit. And this, I'm pretty sure this is just in Charlie's office or something. I don't think it's a movie set. Another picture of Frank and Charlie. The Sales lived at 606 West Main Street, where they raised their family. We've got a picture of Dr. Sale posed in front. The second picture is when they downsized about 1926 to a bungalow in the Buena Vista Court. Here's a couple of pictures of Lillie. Frank and Lillie celebrated their 58th wedding anniversary in September 1939. When they celebrated their 50th, it was a much bigger deal. They recreated the wedding ceremony. They had like 3 cakes and a whole florist shop full of flowers. But they continued to celebrate every year as long as they lived. This group includes, on the front, Bud McCoy, who is Edna's son. In back is Frank. And then the little boy is unidentified. I'm pretty sure he's either Jerry McCoy, who's Edna's youngest child, or Dwight Sale, Charlie's youngest child, named for Charlie's brother Dwight. And then Charlie on the right. And this photograph was part of the collection. It had absolutely no identification on it, but I really liked it, so I wanted to share it. And these are formal portraits of Frank and Lillie. This one's not quite as sharp because it's from a newspaper, but this was another one of the trips out to Charlie and Marie's Beverly Hills home, this time in 1936. All the family made it out except Edna and her husband Joseph and their children. Mrs. Lillie Belle Partlow Sale, 82, wife of Dr. F.O. Sale, died at 1:25 p.m. Thursday, 29 August 1940 at the family home. She had been confined to her home since November 7th when she fell and broke her hip. Until that time, she had remained unusually active. Mrs. Sale's daughter, Mrs. Edna McCoy of Patterson, New Jersey, was with her when she died, and Mrs. Wren of Glendale, California, arrived Friday. Mrs. Sale was an active worker in the Methodist Church and devoted much of her time to charitable activities, perhaps best remembered for her kind deeds. She was a member of the Twin City Women's Club, Order of the Eastern Star, and the PEO Sisterhood. She was a staunch advocate for women's suffrage. Mrs. Sale had natural talent for writing poetry and often, donning appropriate costume, read some of it for her friends. She is also remembered for having trunks of costumes in the attic, which were the delight of the children and their playmates. She was attendance or truant officer at the Urbana Public Schools for some 30 years. But that title doesn't adequately describe the work she did. Mrs. Sale saw to it that aid was given, whether it be a child in need of shoes or clothing, a mother who needed medical help and had no credit, or even a mother who needed an operation and was at the point of death or any other need. Funeral services for Mrs. F.O. Sale were conducted at 2:30 p.m. Saturday, 31 August 1940, from the First Methodist Church of Urbana by the pastor, T.W. Thompson. Interment was at the family lot at Woodlawn Cemetery. Just over 6 months since the passing of Lillie, Dr. Frank Orville Sale died on Thursday, 10 April 1941, at his home at 7 Buena Vista Court at the age of 84. He was Champaign County's oldest dentist. He practiced for 50 years, retiring in 1930. His health had been failing for several months from infirmities incident to advanced age, but declined rapidly since the past Saturday. Dr. Sale had been a member of the Methodist Church since 1865. He was a member of the various branches of the Urbana Masonic Lodges and had filled all the offices. He was also a member of the Urbana Oddfellows Lodge. It was Dr. Sale's request that the Knights Templar Lodge conduct their burial service for him, and he stipulated in some notes of his life he left that his Knights Templar ring should be presented to Mrs. Marie Sale in trust for her first son, who became a Knights Templar. The Renner Funeral Home provided undertaking services. The funeral was held at the First Methodist Church of Urbana under the auspices of the Urbana Commandery, number 16, Knights Templar, under the charge of the pastor, Reverend Laren Spear, who was assisted by District Superintendent C.M. Thompson, a former pastor and friend of Dr. Sale. Burial was in Woodlawn Cemetery beside the body of Mrs. Sale. Okay, now we're going to focus in on Chick. Charlie attended Leal School in Urbana. He did not like school and did not graduate from high school. One report mentions him taking a business course, and another mentions him attending the University of Illinois. That article also says that the professors were unimpressed and suggested he leave. It also said Charlie was more interested in fraternity than classes. He did spend a lot of time at the Sigma Nu House and was an honorary member. Charlie possessed unusual ability as a cartoonist and had ambitions to make that his life work. You might notice the enhancements that Charlie penciled in on the postcard. There's Charlie is up on the top with a telescope. He's drawn in the sun. Over on the the right, he's drawn in a banner that says F.O. Sale. And he's enhanced this postcard as well. This is taken at the Big 4 Yards. There's Charlie running down to catch a train to go visit his friend. In writing to his friends when they were away on visits, he would almost invariably depend upon his pencil or pen sketches to help tell the message of his letter. Let's see, I already mentioned the enhancements on the postcards. Charlie was 10 when the family left Huron, South Dakota, for Urbana. When he was 15, he got a job as an errand boy in the Big 4 shops. He worked himself up to a full-fledged machinist with a union card. This is a photo of an engine Charlie built that was printed in the Champaign-Urbana News-Gazette in November 1936. It has been reported that when Charlie went to the theater for the first time and saw the performance given by the Nancy Boyer Stock Company at the Walker Opera House in Champaign, the show business seed was firmly planted in his brain. Charlie was a natural mimic, and his characterizations of local eccentrics always amused his fellow workers, who he kept entertained during the lunch break. He conceived the idea of making the stage his life profession and was encouraged by his fellow workers. In 1908, Charlie had made the decision to abandon railroad work and go on the stage. He held on to his union card, though, lest something happen to his theatrical career. This is actually a retiree card. Charlie's co-workers convinced him to go perform at the Big Four Band's concert at Mount Carmel on 13 April 1908. He recited and offered some impersonations and received $10 for his services. Charlie went to Indianapolis and got a job at the Busy Bee restaurant while he took dancing lessons from Professor Reyna. However, Charlie soon discovered that he had 2 left feet. Charlie went to Decatur and appeared at an amateur night for manager Siegfried, who suggested that if he had some wardrobe for his characters, he would have an act. Another actor on the bill, half kidding, suggested that he write to Gus' son. He did and got a job. He got 14 weeks from Sun at $25 a week. Other managers raised his salary little by little. His act improved, and he decided to invade New York. He had the distinction of being one of the few big-time acts that were not, at one time or another, canceled by Gus' son. Mark Fuller Golden brought him to New York in 1909. He opened at Union Hill and scored a hit, but Alonzo Poli was the only booker who would consider the act. He opened on the Poli circuit and was moved from second to next to closing every week until he reached New Haven, where Mr. Poli saw the act and said the college boys don't like that style of the act, and consequently canceled the rest of Chick's engagement. He did manage to get booked on the Orpheum circuit and was well received. His success over the Orpheum circuit had strengthened him in his resolve to make good in New York, and he managed to get booked at the 5th Avenue in 4th spot and went over splendidly. Keller then booked him around New York from week to week at $150 and $175 till he finally landed at the Palace and got a regular route at an increased salary. Jumping in too much ahead here. Then came 2.5 years on Broadway under the management of the Shuberts. A scout for one of the leading vaudeville circuits heard of his act and offered Chick a contract. The salary was several times larger than the one he had been receiving, but Sale had begun to realize that he was a hit and demanded more. He failed to get more, though, because the manager told him he had yet to win a reputation. Within another year, Chick had that reputation. And he enhanced his reputation, I think this was a gutsy move, by suing Eva Tankay, then a top liner in vaudeville, for a place in the lights of a Chicago theater that he claimed she had usurped. He won, and Miss Tankay had to be content with second place. Two talented young men from Urbana gave a benefit performance for the Knights of Pythias before a good crowd at the Illinois Theater on 9 January 1912. Saul Cohen, the violinist, had recently returned from his European studies, and Chick Sale, who had recently made a success on the vaudeville stage, was in town between engagements to visit his parents, teamed up for the benefit. Saul Cohen performed several pieces on his violin, accompanied by his mother, Mrs. N.H. Cohen. The entire Cohen family were gifted musicians. Chick Sale performed his original sketch, The Country School Entertainment, which had made him one of the most popular vaudeville performers on the road. His lightning changes in impersonating different pupils, the teacher, and the rude constable were remarkable, and his impersonations perfection. This is another ad. This is from the Walker in 1912. Also on the bill was his relatively new wife, Marie Bishop. Ah, I didn't note down where I had these pictures in here. These were unlabeled. I'm guessing that they are various characters in Chick's country schoolhouse sketch. Okay, now we come to when he meets his wife. This is probably how Chick looked about this time. Marie Bishop Sale related the story of the somewhat whirlwind romance between her and Charlie to John Wolfendingen. That was published by the Herald Weekend magazine in February 1977. The year was 1911. Marie was a 20-year-old violinist on the Bijou Vaudeville circuit playing in Salt Lake City. Juggling Briscoe was on the same bill as Marie. He and his wife were the only friends in town, were her only friends in town. Chick Sale, another friend of the Briscoes, was also in Salt Lake City playing his smash comedy hit, Country School Entertainment, on the higher class Orpheum circuit. Charlie told Briscoe that he had seen Marie in Spokane and wanted to meet her. Briscoe replied that she doesn't talk to actors, she'll upstage you. So, yep, that's what I got next. Charlie persisted and convinced Briscoe to invite Marie to a party in the Briscoe hotel room that night after the show, along with Sale. The foursome dined on chicken salad sandwiches and ice cream, while the men regaled the ladies with hilarious tales of their earliest days in vaudeville. Marie Bishop remembered Chick Sale as a man who had stared at her across a hotel lobby in Spokane while she was writing a letter home. And somewhere else on the tour, she had noticed him again in a restaurant, staring at her. She had no idea who he was. Let's see what's next. Okay. Charlie noticed that Marie was wearing a Sigma Xi sister pin given her by her brother, and told her he wrote his act at the Sigma Nu House at the University of Illinois. She decided then and there that any Sigma Nu would likewise be highly respectable and dependable. Next morning, they took a sightseeing bus tour of Salt Lake City together, then lunched at a cafeteria prior to their matinee performances. The next morning, they took another bus tour. Charlie confided in her, "There's a girl back home I'm thinking of asking to marry me. If you'll walk over to my hotel with me, I'll show you her picture. I want to ask your advice." Well, Marie was crushed, as she thought Charlie had showed a decided preference for her. She nodded and went along to see the picture. He took her by a route which passed the theater where she was appearing. On an easel out on the sidewalk was a large portrait of Marie Bishop playing her violin. Possibly this one, or one very similar. "That's the girl," said Chick Sale. "What do you think?" Charlie was due in Denver that weekend, and the Bijou management was sending Marie to Ogden, then on to play Cripple Creek, Leadville, and Trinidad. Charlie took a train to Cripple Creek from Denver her first Saturday night there, and brought her a diamond solitaire. He advised her to go to Denver after she had played Trinidad and see the head of the circuit, and he'd get her back home to Seattle. She did not see her fiancé from October to March, and then went to Boston, where her aunt lived, and where Chick was playing the Keith. They were married there, had no time for a honeymoon, and after several months on tour, returned to Seattle, where Chick was playing the Orpheum and met her family for the first time. Ooh. Oh, okay. Scared me for a minute. Okay. Sarah Bernhardt and her roadshow were leaving an engagement in Milwaukee, as Chick was arriving in Milwaukee for his own engagement. Somehow, Sale's baggage containing his costumes and makeup became mixed up with the Bernhardt luggage and was taken to Chicago. Until it could be picked up and returned, the Milwaukee theater was short one act, Chicks. Charlie volunteered to have Marie fill in. Marie rushed to the hotel, picked up some music, and rehearsed it with the pianist for the Eddie Foy His Boys and Girls Act. After the matinee, the manager said to Charlie, "You're foolish if you don't use your wife in your act," and he wrote to the head of the circuit recommending me. This is a quote from Marie. A similar thing happened in Memphis. Then when Marie and Charlie returned from a summer tour during which he was expecting their first baby. Later, she went back on tour, but soon left show business permanently when she became pregnant with the twins. The fourth child came along a few years later. Okay, I'm going to pause just a second for a drink. A list of the stage shows. They're all musical reviews with large casts. Think of the Follies, as they built Follies. Comedians and novelty acts were often included. Actually, Will Rogers frequently appeared in the Follies. I'm not going to read through all of these. Now Chick is more established in vaudeville. This is one of the ads for the his appearance at the local Orpheum in December 1920. This ad featured Chick. This is the same show, but it includes all of the other people on the bill. This is from May 1925. And this one is an appearance at the Virginia in October 1932. And here's a picture of Charlie along with Will Rogers. And you probably don't know because I haven't told you yet. One of Charlie's acts featured is him playing I want to say tuba, but that doesn't look like a tuba to me. Anyway, they've switched each other's props. Charlie's holding the lariat and Will is holding the tuba. And sort of stealing a little bit from Will Rogers, Charlie decided to write a newspaper column. It didn't last a whole long time, mostly during 1930. They published it in the News Gazette, and here's just a few examples. They're very short. He also did at least one radio broadcast. Chick made an appearance on Tuesday, 5 November 1929 on the Ever Ready Hour over the National Broadcasting Company's radio stations. He presented his sketch where he took the part of Eagle-Eyed Elmer, the watchman at the railroad crossing. Here's the story. Elmer is welcomed back from the big city by his village cronies. He recounts for them the famous incident when he was called as a witness for the defense in a suit against the railroad. Elmer was watchman at a crossing where the Hartford His nibs revolves around a village motion picture theater, the Slippery Elm Picture Palace, and shows with keen humor and clean fun all the village characters who gather about the place when his nibs begins to run the spools through the movie machine. Then, too, the comedy also shows the burlesque melodrama projected by his nibs upon the Slippery Elm screen. Thus, his nibs at times becomes a motion picture. It starred Walter Houston, Chick Sale, Francis Starr, and Dickie Moore. Chick plays the character Grandpa Summerall, who he had also played in The Man Who Knew Lincoln. It's one of Chick's best roles. The star witness family falls afoul of underworld domination. Grandpa Summerall is a foxy, fife-playing Civil War veteran on a 48-hour leave from the soldiers' home. Dinner at his daughter's is interrupted by a shooting in the street. The whole family rushes to the window and sees a notorious thug shoot down another man. The father of the family is later waylaid by the gang, and all are intimidated and leave. Summerall, who frees his kidnapped grandson, rounds up the criminals, gives some life tips to the cops, and finally turns star witness. But this is only the barest outline of the story. This played at the Rialto Sunday through Wednesday, October 4 to 7 October 1933. The Expert was written by Edna Ferber and George S. Kaufman. Chick plays Grandpa John T. Minnick. Dickie Moore plays Dickie. To Chicago to live with his son and daughter-in-law. Despite the old fellow's good intentions, he becomes a useless irritation to the couple. However, Grandpa befriends a young orphan boy whom he helps to set upon the straight and narrow path. He finds solace in this relationship and also in the company of hope is that a German doctor will be able to operate and fix his leg. When his cousin Froggy comes to live with his family, he is nice to Mr. and Mrs. Randall, but mean to Eddie. Uncle Jonas sees what is happening, but Eddie's parents do not believe him, as Froggy seems so nice. Uncle Jonas tries to make Eddie tougher by teaching him boxing and baseball, but all it does is gets Jonas thrown out of the house. And in the collection, we've got a few scenes from the film. And there's two here, both with Chick and Jackie in costume and in their street clothes. and that played at the Virginia in 1932. Jackie Cooper played Jim Hawkins, and Chick played Ben Gunn, a half-witted marooned pirate. It was directed by Victor Fleming. The cast also included Lionel Barrymore and Nigel Bruce, among other people, but those are the two names I recognize. Young Jim Hawkins is torn between his loyalty to his benefactors and his affection for the lovable rogue Long John Silver in their struggle to recover a buried pirate treasure. Rocky Mountain Mystery was released in 1935. It starred Randolph Scott, Mrs. Leslie Carter, and Chick as Deputy Tex Murdoch. Perfect tribute. Enthusiasm following delivery of his address. The following day, while taking a reflective walk around he literally runs into Lincoln. The boy explains that his brother, a Southern soldier wounded in battle, is dying and wants to dictate his will. Lincoln agrees to help and follows him to a nearby hospital. The soldier, eyes bandaged and unaware of the stranger's identity, regales him with the newspaper's account of the eloquent speech and recites as much as he is able, whereupon Lincoln finishes the speech. The soldier reassures him that the crowd's lack of an ovation was because they were too much in awe to move or speak. Of the cast of 10, Chick is the only credited actor. Walter Brennan played the stonecutter, and George Ernest played the soldier's brother. The film was released in August 1935 with a premiere in Springfield, Illinois in September, hosted by Governor Henry Horner. Charlie flew in from Beverly Hills and stayed at the Horner, a Lincoln authority, gave the film high marks, saying Mr. Sale has come the closest to accurately portraying the true Lincoln. You Only Live Once. This was Chick's last movie. In fact, it was released in January 1937, after he had died the prior November. He died 7 November, and filming was completed 13 November 1936. You Only Live Once was directed by Fritz Lang. It starred Sylvia Sidney and Henry Fonda. Margaret Hamilton was also in the cast. Joan, played by Sylvia Sidney, is the secretary to the public defender. She marries an ex-convict named Eddie, played by Henry Fonda. They try to make a life together, but a series of disasters sends their lives spiraling out of control. The Champaign-Urbana News-Gazette shared an Associated Press report on Wednesday, 4 November 1936, that Chick Sale was critically ill with lobar pneumonia and under an oxygen tent in Good Samaritan Hospital in Hollywood. Marie Sale had sent a letter to Chick's parents on the prior Sunday, advising that Charlie was ill. The doctors didn't yet know it was pneumonia or how serious it was. They were taking Charlie to the hospital, and he was well taken care of and would be over the illness within a few days. However, It was, oh, probably jumped the gun there, but we all know he died. However, it was soon reported that Charlie was losing ground. His physician and wife Marie remained at the hospital overnight, and family was called in. His sister, Virginia, also lived in Hollywood. For a brief time, it appeared Charlie was rallying. Virginia sent a wire of encouragement to their parents. Unfortunately, a crisis came Friday night, and he sank rapidly. The next telegram went to Wesley Huss, a neighbor of Frank and Lillie. Virginia asked him to break the news gently as possible to father and mother. Charlie is gone. Charlie died Saturday, 7 November 1936 at 12:50 p.m. with his family at his bedside, his wife Marie and their 4 children, Cherry Sale, Charles Bishop Sale, Mary Sale, and Dwight Sale. Governor Horner. This is the marker at the mausoleum. Private funeral services were held on Monday, 9 November 1936 at the Little Church of the Flowers. Miss Ruth Ray, a reader of the Unity Faith, officiated. In her eulogy, she said, "In death, his genius becomes more brilliant, growing more alive. He was a great personality, a national personality." Private services were attended by 250 persons, and they included stage and screen notables. 3 I recognized were Joe E. Brown, Harold Lloyd, and Pat O'Brien. The body was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. At the same time as the ceremony in California, there were also brief rites in his parents' home. Frank and Lillie Belle were devastated by Charlie's death. Dr. Sale said that he and Mrs. Sale would not be able to make the trip to California. Both had spent several months within the year with their famous son and his family in his California home. At the same time as the services in California, a few close family friends attended a brief memorial service for the actor in the home of his parents. It was conducted by Reverend T.W. Thompson, pastor of the First Methodist Church. The bell in the Urbana City building tolled for 5 minutes early Monday afternoon in commemoration of Charles Chick Sale, and resolutions of respect were passed by the Urbana Association of Commerce directors and sent to the family. The specialist. To let you know that. Chick Sale once said that Lem Putt really lived, though that wasn't his real name. He was just as sincere in his work as a great painter whose heart is in his canvas. And in this little sketch, I have simply tried to bring you recollections of a man I once knew, who was so rich in odd and likable traits of character as to make a most lasting impression on my memory. Like all of his sketches, Chick paid careful attention to the audience reaction and modified accordingly. If a line didn't work, it was removed or reworked. The specialist sketch was the result of months of work. In the fall of 1928, 2 St. Louis newspapermen persuaded Charlie that the specialist should be issued in book form, and in his theater dressing room, a contract was drawn up. Chick was to receive 50% of the proceeds, and the other 2 to split the balance. In its first year, 1929, it shot to the top of the bestseller list. Charlie was working for the Schuberts at the time. J.J. Schubert told him, "I can't understand you. You won't allow anything risque in your act, but you've just written the dirtiest book I've ever read." Charlie showed him a rave review in the Vassar student newspaper that called it the funniest book of this year, I give up, said Schubert. Marie noted that Charlie was always upset by critics who referred to the specialist as crude or vulgar. They just don't understand character, he would say. It's one of the illustrations in The Specialist. The Specialist had sold over 2.5 million copies by 1977. And at that point, it was in its 23rd printing. And it has since gone through at least 2 more printings. That's in the United States. It was also published in 11 other countries. The book sales definitely helped Chick's vaudeville and movie career. That deal in the dressing room grew into the Specialist Publishing Company. Chick put out a sequel, I'll tell you why, in 1930, but it never attained the success of The Specialist, and for a time it was out of print, but then was published again. Chick also wrote a second sequel, go on to that one, The Champion Cornhusker Crashes the Movies. That also didn't come close to the sales record of The Specialist. Here's a picture of Marie Sale in later life. After her business manager retired, Marie continued to run the company as a one-woman show. She learned bookkeeping, ordered additional printings as needed, and fulfilled the orders. It was mainly a mail order business, as bookstores were hesitant to stock the book due to its small size of just 4 inches by 6 inches and only 27 pages, including the illustrations. One Hollywood Boulevard bookshop told Marie they couldn't keep it on display because people kept stealing it. Marie said in 1977 that Charlie would be the greatest source of pleasure. I don't know what I'll do without it. Marie also wrote a biography of Chick, but it was never published. Marie Bishop Sale died in 1985 in Carmel, California. And that's the end. I'll take questions. If anybody locally has any, did we get any come through over the internet?
I don't think we have any over the internet. I did have a question. So, did I hear correctly that Chick Sale's name came to be associated with outhouses as a result of his book, The Specialist?
You didn't hear it from me. But yes, that is quite true. And actually, his mother was rather upset when people did refer to the outhouses as Chick Sales.
Just a comment. The instrument you referred to in the picture with Will Rogers as a tuba, it's a euphonium.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more?
I am not seeing any more questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope
Thank you.
everybody liked it. Hope people learned something.